Welcome back. You're watching 101. We're speaking with Maestro Zubin Mehta. Your career actually did take off very young, relatively young. You won the international conducting competition in Liverpool.
Liverpool.
Yeah, in 1958. You were just 22 years old.
Yeah.
What sort of impact did that have in defining your path?
Well, it gave me the real first push, of course, because many people, especially in and around England, heard about it. And I spent one season there. But my first prize was to be assistant to Sir John Pritchard, which I learned a lot from that orchestra. I was very green. I was given pieces to conduct, which I really conduct for the first time with very little rehearsal. And
you actually, a lot happened in your life early on, because it was around that time you debuted in Vienna, you won this contest, international.
1961 was a sort of a pivotal year.
By which time you were already married a couple of years, your first wife, the
Yes.
Canadian soprano singer, Carmen Lasky.
Yeah.
And you had a couple of children, your son and daughter with her, and then that sort of dissolved. I was reading, you said it was sort of just, I guess there was a lot of pressure in those days.
Well, pressure, ambition, impatience. It's one of my big mistakes of my life.
Really? So looking back on it, it's one of the regrets?
Yes, I think so. Because my children grew up without my from under my umbrella.
It was interesting because then she married your brother a few years later.
My brother was really the surrogate father for my two children.
How did you manage to keep everything amicable?
Everything is one big family.
Now, you also then, your second marriage was to an actress. It was an American, actually.
Yeah.
And that was, it was interesting. Nancy Kovac, I guess, had to sort of learn about your Indian and Parsi culture. How did she adjust with that?
Well, she got to know my parents, and my mother was a good educator, although Nancy sort of fitted in very well. She's an excellent Indian cook, very good. But we all cook, as you know. We leave our country, we start cooking.
I mean, same here, yeah. No, but the reason I ask is because I know you consider yourself Indian first and foremost. Well, you say actually when you're outside India, you're Indian first and foremost. When you go back to India, certainly in Bombay, you're Parsi first and foremost.
Well, you know, in a country of 1.2 billion, the Parsi community measures about 50,000 in Bombay. That's a minority. So we have to be a little bit. But, you know, in all the over 1,000 years that the Parsis have been living in India, there has been hardly any confrontation with the Hindus or the Muslims. Yeah, because we don't convert, you see. So there was no threat that we will try to convert the Hindus around us. And then after the Muslim invasion, we got along well with them too.
In terms of your connection with Israel, how did that become such an important part of your life?
Well, I went there, as I said, for an ailing conductor, the great Eugene Ormandy, cancelled, and I was sitting in Vienna with my wife and children, you know, not penniless, but without any work. And they had heard of me, and they called me. And there was an immediate communication with the musicians, because without that, there is no future. It was a young country in those days, and I kept on being called back. And by 1969, they offered me to be music director. So with my job in Los Angeles, I had a lot of free time, apart from what I was doing in Los Angeles. So I accepted it. And sort of I've grown up with that orchestra now. And thank God it's the positive face of Israel. You know, what you read on the front pages is not what you read on the culture pages with the Israel Philharmonic. So we do a little of good work, which sometimes the leaders tend to negate.
And of course, Daniel Barenboim is very active as well, trying to keep both sides at least.
But I do what he does outside. I'm trying to do inside. I have a training program of Israeli Arabs now, starting with the help of an Israeli bank that gives me substantial sums of money. So we will send our musicians in the north to Israeli Arab towns like Shvaram, Nazareth, Jaffa also, and because there's a lot of talent and they want to study Western music. And this is a way of also getting them to us. And my dream really is to have in the future an Israeli Arab playing in the Israel Philharmonic, because I know the talent is there. So we are trying to do it within the country, and we give concerts also where Arabs and Jews sit together. Maybe they are not agreeing with everything about the philosophies, but during the Beethoven Ninth Symphony, they sit together and they give us a standing ovation. And at least maybe they smile at each other during the hour's music.
Something common shared.
So this is important.
Interestingly enough, one of the things you did try to do was play some Wagner, which the Israelis are really not a fan of because of the connections with the Nazis.
Well, there are still a lot of people with numbers on their forearms. And we have to be sensitive to that. There is no taboo from the government to play Wagner, not at all. But people, music takes them back to the days of terror. And they don't want to remember that. And so I tried it in 1981, unsuccessfully. And I haven't tried it since then.
You've done some amazing things. I mean, there was one very memorable, remarkable performance. You did a collaboration with Itzhak Perlman, Pinchas Zuckerman, Jacqueline Dupre, and Daniel Barenboim. It was the Schubert-Trout Quintet, and that was in 1969. Yeah, I know you were also involved with the Three Tenors. That was also quite a remarkable gathering of talent too. But do these kind of collaborations really happen so much nowadays?
Well, friends get together to make music, and that was what was it. And with the Three Tenors, it was that Jose Carreras was, you know, deathly ill with leukemia, and he was almost cured, and he came back to life, back to the theaters of the world. So the concert was to welcome him and do a concert on the eve of the finals of the World Cup in Rome.
What do you see as your defining moment, the biggest defining moment in your life?
Well, I suppose those months in 1961 where I had the opportunity to conduct the Vienna Philharmonic, Berlin Philharmonic, and the Israel Philharmonic. And all three were successful enough that they called me back. And that was the sort of launch of the future of my life.
Interestingly enough, since then you've been mentioned in a Frank Zappa song, and you've also...
Well, I met him once on a radio show in Los Angeles. And I knew him as a very famous pop musician, but I was surprised when he told me that he goes to libraries on tour and studies the music of Stravinsky and Varese. So I was very impressed. I said, why don't you write something for me? So he did, and we performed it once. It was not too successful, but we did it.
And then you had a Muppet named after you, Zubin Mehta.
Yeah, well, I had nothing to do with that.
Must have been a surprise, though.
Yeah.
And as a celebrity and a musician, you've helped a lot in times of crisis. You were involved in the post-Yugoslav war fundraising.
Well, we have to use our music also, not
That's what I was
just playing
ask you.
for the normal 2,000 people who come to subscription concerts. We must use it. In 1982, I took the Israel Philharmonic across the Lebanese border with the help of the border police and the blessing of the Christian Lebanese who live there. And we played in a tobacco field. But the audience was only the southern Lebanese. It was one of those hinge moments where there was real friendship. Afterwards, the Israelis went in, stayed for 3 years, ruined everything. But at the end of that concert, they came on stage and started hugging our musicians. And we played this free concert for them. It was one of those moments also in Sarajevo.
Yeah.
It was 94, it's the midst of the Bosnian War. And our impresario who did the Three Tenors concert, Mario Draghi, he has these crazy ideas. He took Jose Carreras, Ruggero Raimondi, the great bass, and two Italian singers. And we did the Mozart Requiem because we had found out a lot of the orchestra and chorus were killed. So we brought in musicians from Ljubljana, which Slovenia is still free in those days, or had just become free. And we brought in strings for their cellos and violins, reeds for the clarinets. And we sort of formed the orchestra again and gave this concert in the bombed Muslim library. Because the first thing the Serbs did was to bomb the library. It's a wonderful Muslim architecture. And we played in the bombed courtyard. And that doesn't help only my soul, but a lot of people around the world.
And you have a goal to expand with music schools in places like India as well, help the needy there too. Yeah?
Well, I'm starting a foundation in Bombay in my father's name, and we have over 200 young kids who come to study violin. We buy cheap violins from China, children's violins, and all the concerts I give in Bombay are now in aid of the Zubin Mehta Foundation for Western music.
Is there any major project, any major goal you've set yourself you haven't had a chance to tackle yet?
Well, in music, yes. There's one Wagner opera still that I have not conducted, Parsifal, which I must do in the near future. And a lot of contemporary music, because we do a lot of music composed day before yesterday. young composers have to be helped. So whether it's in the Middle East or America.
And you do some fusion as well. You'd worked in the past, for example, with Ravi Shankar as well.
Yes.
You see more opportunity for that collaboration?
Yeah, I hope to work with his daughter one of these days too.
Now, if you're to be remembered a certain way, to leave a legacy, what would you like your legacy to be?
Well, that I've been honest towards my music, towards the great masters that I interpret, and that I've tried to help to bring people together, whether it's in the Middle East or in Bosnia, or God willing, inshallah, in Kashmir one day, to play for everybody there.
Maestro, I wish you a lot of luck. Thank you very much for your time.
Okay.
Thank you. God bless.